Hello, welcome families, welcome GCS community to our Fireside Chat, which is math for everyday and future success. We're so excited that you're all joining us this evening. I'm really excited to have some of our teachers and school leaders who are here to talk about math, what we're doing now, what we might be doing in the future. And we're going to hear from them to get their thoughts. And at the end, we can open up for some questions from the audience if we have any. So before we get started into our chat, I just wanted to take a few moments to introduce myself. I'm Rhonda Baldenegro. I'm our executive director. And before being our executive director, I was our director of instruction, our school principal at GCS1, assistant principal, and then I've done some teaching, mostly of 4th and 5th grade in the past. And math was my favorite subject to teach, so I'm excited to introduce you to our panel today. So wanted to hand it over to Daniela to share a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Hi, Daniela Hernandez. I'm the GCS2 school principal. This is my son, Ruben. He is also joining. And I currently am the GCS2 principal. I've been with the organization. I'm in my 7th year. I actually started as a GCS2 founding teacher.
No, mommy.
And then I jumped.
Mommy.
And then I jumped. Okay, papas, un segundo. I then became the org-wide math instructional specialist, held that for about 4 years, I believe. And this is my 2nd year as principal. Prior to joining GCS, I was a classroom teacher, taught 1st through 5th grade, primarily 3rd and 4th.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ms. Gomez, Maria Gomez. I am a 3rd grade teacher at GCS2. I have been teaching for 7 years. I was a founding year teacher at GCS, and before that, I was an IA, an instructional aide at GCS1. So I've been at GCS for a long time, and I've grown a lot with them, and specifically Daniela, she was, I want to say, my PD, and continues to be my PD in math.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susanna Law, and I teach kindergarten and TK at GCS1. I've been at GCS for 7 years. Before that, I've taught in some other districts, did some substitute teaching. I've taught 4th grade, 5th grade, a little bit of that. I've been more recently a mentor with the Alder program at GCS. I've been, a long time ago, as a nutritional coach. It was fun to think back, doing some different things. So, but yeah, I think I've really enjoyed math. Well, we'll go on this math journey together in a little bit here, but I think one thing I remember back when Daniela was a math specialist and some of those PDs, number talks, just digging into the standards, that has really helped shape some of my math philosophy and what we use for math today.
I'm Susie Janazian. I'm currently the 3rd grade math and science teacher at GCS1. I gotta say, I never liked math as a student, but I love teaching it now. So I have a really good perspective for the kids who struggle with math. I'm looking forward to having this chat with you all.
Thank you all. We have a very wonderful panel with lots of different experience teaching at both of our campuses and being in different roles. So it's going to be a really exciting chat today. So I wanted to kind of start with the first question, which is what made you fall in love in teaching mathematics? What do you love about it? Was there a moment? Was there a lesson that you had yourself that really made you fall in love with math and the teaching of mathematics?
I'd say that I was kind of like Miss Janazian. I didn't like math very much growing up. I mean, I kind of had a negative feeling about it, like, oh, especially in high school. I think it was really hard, challenging for me. And when I I remember being at PCC, and, I'd say we had had to make up some math credits. I don't know if I was behind or why I had to do it, but we had to go and you could watch videos, and we would watch these videos of a math instructor, and it's kind of at your own pace, and they have different instructors, and I just started to like get it. And I remember hearing like watching a video on fractions, and it felt like I was just like a light bulb went off, and it was like, whoa, this is it. Okay. And it just started, I felt like I was good at it. And once I felt good at it, I think I started to like it more. And so it took me a long time to really feel like I was good at it. Not until probably early on in college.
The light bulb thing triggered me, Miss Law. I know growing up, I always had this feeling of I hate math. And it's because I wanted people to tell me why the answer was what it was. I wanted to know the why. I wanted to know how we got to that answer. And growing up for me, it was always like A plus B equals C, you know, that's the answer. And you need to learn how to do it, like everyone else. And I actually didn't start to like math till I started to teach it. About, I'd say like 7 years ago, doing first grade math, my first classroom. I was teaching first grade math, which is super easy. So of course I knew the answers, but it was the first time I understood why the answer was the answer because I was teaching it. And that light bulb went off for me like, oh my God, if only my teachers had shown me the math in the different ways that we are doing now with Common Core, I would have understood it and I wouldn't have hated it. And I think that because it kind of brought out that light bulb in me, it was so much more fun and easier for me to teach it because I knew the struggle of kids who needed to see it in multiple ways. And so that helped me start to fall in love with it as well.
Wow, I feel like we all start off hating math and now look at us all talking about math. Um, I did not like math. I just didn't understand it as a child. I think I'm a very introverted person, and I remember back in the day, it was a very cold call situation in math. Our teacher used to have us stand up and like recite multiplication, and as a quiet kid, that gave me so much anxiety. And things didn't come quickly to me, which again, the teaching style that was favored a long time ago was you had to have the answers right away. It didn't really allow for students to take time to process and have more discussion about the responses and different, strategies to solve. Um, so that kind of harbored like a negative environment for me. I did fall in love teaching it, and specifically like number talks revolutionized the way I saw math. When I did make the transition from first grade to third grade math and science, Miss Hernandez, the principal, had to like sit me down and just tell me, don't be scared. Um, it'll be really fun. And it has been so much fun teaching third grade math, specifically what Susie mentioned, just understanding the why behind the math. With multiplication, going back to the cold calling situation I was in as a kid, I was expected to memorize things, but now being able to tell my kids like what multiplication actually means, and then me hearing them explain to someone else what that means has kind of like healed the math hating little girl in me. And it's been really great seeing them fall in love with math.
Um, so I love hearing everything you say, and I will say that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He's having a moment. And he's learned how to count to two. So early math. Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry.
Well, I typically don't tell stories during this prompt, but I will give Miss Hernandez a moment to make sure that Ruben is okay. And I will tell a little story of math. I was the kid who could always get math, like times tables correctly, like quickly, correctly. I was great at memorizing things. Goodness gracious. If there was like an A plus B equals C and I could like memorize it and know it quickly, boy, like I felt really, really good about math. I started to not like math when I hit geometry in high school. and I couldn't memorize things anymore. The strategy didn't work anymore. And I had used a strategy for so long and it didn't work. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I hate math. I'm scared of math. This feeling of like not having the answer or knowing how to get to it and like how to unpack it or kind of like logically work through it didn't make sense because my old strategy of just memorizing everything, to Ms. Gomez's point of like that was the way that worked back then, just wasn't working anymore. And it actually took me through like college to be able to kind of like work through some things and be in different types of classes to really enjoy math. So I started liking it. There was this big confidence dip when I was challenged. And then I was like, as an adult, and I think as a teacher, you learn to love math because you see that there's so many ways to be able to solve problems. And I think being able to look at those concepts when kids are forming math and be able to figure out how can I make it make sense and how can they make it make sense to them. It's just math is powerful, and it's powerful when you understand it and you have time to work through it and you can explain it. And I feel like the way math was taught when I was growing up was just very, very different. And when it was challenging, it was so hard. And now I feel like I think about math in a new way.
I'm toddler free for a little bit, so fingers crossed it will last. And I like want to respond to all of you for different reasons, but I will say just one comment. Gomez, I truly, having taught first through fifth grade, I think third grade is the best grade to teach as it relates to math because you just expand the world of numbers and like operations in such beautiful ways, and you can get ahead of all the misconceptions that make middle school teachers want to pull out their hair. And I think similarly to Dr. Baldenegro, I always did very well in math. I actually excelled because I was really good at memorizing things, and math just, it was like, oh, this is easy, I got it. And it wasn't until high school trig that I had a very different experience. And then after that point and through high school and even as an early career math teacher, I really like identified as like not a math person. And it wasn't until my first year teaching, I was teaching fourth grade, I will never forget. I didn't understand what a standard was. It was early Common Core days. I don't think most people understood them, right? And I was trying to teach long division through, I was teaching like the algorithm, the standard algorithm for long division. And I was just like, what don't you guys get? You know, it was such a frustrating moment. And I was like, this is not right. There has to be a way for me to be able to teach division in a way that makes sense to kids. And of course, being myself, I was like, I have to figure this out. And I did my own research and I came across like Marilyn Burns, I think her name was Marilyn Burns, her work. And I became obsessed with the way she, like the activities and the tasks that she had created to teach long division and multiplication. And I was just like mind blown. And then I became very much obsessed with math. It became my favorite subject to teach. Um, and what I learned through that experience is the power of like meeting kids where they are and building off of their own understanding of mathematics. And when you do that, there is no way that a kid will not love math and identify as a math person. So I think that's the moment that stood out to me that made me realize how much I love math.
Beautiful stories and seeing lots of similarities and connecting points, within those stories. To that end, I think when we think about teaching, it's a craft, right? You have the skills and pedagogy that you need to know. But there's also an art to teaching. And then there's also the emotional component to learning. And so teaching is very much a craft. And so when you're thinking about your experiences and how you learned and how you've seen so many children learn, what would you say is the most important thing to do when teaching math? What is the most important element of successfully teaching math?
I think for me is not seeing myself as the all-knowing expert in the room and seeing my students as like mini co-teachers. we're all learning together. And there's been so many times where a kid will bring up a brilliant strategy that I'll even sit there like, wow, I had never seen it like that. And we'll make a big deal out of it. And someone will bring it up the next lesson and we'll call it the Maximus strategy from now on. So I think that's something that it's something that I remind myself each time as I start growing more in my craft, that I'm not the all-knowing person. There's little babies here who have their own ideas about math and are equally brilliant in it.
I second what Ms. Gomez says, absolutely, and that helps them feel safe when you do math that way, because they know that they're working with you and not learning just from you. But I also want to add to that I think it's so important that we hear all the different strategies from the different kids, because there's always that one kid who'll come up with strategy that somebody else couldn't solve a math problem the way I showed them or the way another student showed them. And so like giving every kid an opportunity to share their ideas, their perspective of how to solve the math problem, I feel like is really important, not just for them to feel confident and appreciated in the classroom, but also for other students to hear the different perspective and hear another strategy that might work better for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think asking those open-ended questions to, what do you notice or what do you wonder? They can go in a direction that if you didn't ask that, you would never even get to hear their thinking. And then having other students, like Susie said, just having other students be able to hear that and go, yeah, me too. This is our me too symbol. And, just that's exciting for them. And just to hear their thought process I think is important. And then I also think making it fun. Math is fun, and bringing in different parts of your life, or different parts of what they're already learning. Math is all around us. We had the most fun math walk to lunch the other day because we've been learning about shapes, and it was like, okay, we're gonna do shapes, and it was just from our classroom to the lunch line. But wow, we found so many shapes and they were so excited, and it was like it's all around us. And it's so I think that to me just speaks to, yeah, it has to be something we talk about every day and in very tangible, real life ways. So, and also a plug for math manipulatives. It's so fun when they get to work with things and touch things. And I think that's something, some math teachers are maybe scared to use or don't bring into their practice, or maybe in the past didn't as much. But man, that I think students really, the level of learning just grows, and you don't have to have it doesn't have to work out right every time. That's the beauty of it. It can you can manipulate the manipulatives somehow in there. So
Oh my gosh, my heart is so full right now. It's like hearing what you all are saying. Like, yes, yes, and yes. And aside from like teacher as facilitator, like creating a community of learners where like all value is honored, like all knowledge is welcomed and like valued, right? And the like stressing the importance of like tools, math manipulatives. Oh my gosh, yes. But I think like as I think about that, for me, I would say that it's really hard to do because like what I'm about to share, I recognize that it's very hard to do because it is not the way we were taught to do math, nor like what we believe math is about, right? But I think as a math educator, it is so important to place value on the process rather than the answer. And if we are able to truly do that, I think we are able to recognize like the genius of every child in the classroom, right? And we are able to help build like the self-esteem and the confidence for them to be able to take risks and get messy mathematically, right? And yeah, and just grow them as mathematicians. So I think to me, that is the most important thing um, to do to be a really effective math teacher.
Well, I think your responses lead us in everything that we've talked about now leads me into my next question. So the words Common Core, and especially Common Core math, because I don't know about you, but I never hear about Common Core English or any other subjects. It's always Common Core math. I would love for you all to share your thoughts about Common Core math. How is math different than it was in the past? What is the big difference? And like, what is the sort of some of the disinformation or the wrong information that you're hearing about Common Core that you might like to dispel?
I guess I might say I'm a little passionate about this I guess like argument for or against Common Core. Um, I found that Common Core math, what it is it teaches you the why in math, and it shows you the different ways to get to the answer, and that any way that you get there, it doesn't matter how you got there as long as you get there. And so doing it the way that's easiest or makes more sense to you is the best way for you. That's what I see Common Core to be. And I know people who are kind of against it or don't really understand it. They believe like we might be giving the kids too much to do. They're trying too many different ways and it's confusing for them. But in all reality, it might be confusing for us as adults if we all of a sudden get thrown all these different ways to solve math problems. But when they're little, it all just makes sense. And we're not trying to force them to do it all of the different ways. We're showing them the opportunities that are available and the different ways that they can reach those problems. And so this is a conversation I've had with lots of people my age or older who just don't get it. They're like, just write the answer, do the algorithm. But not doing the algorithm and learning how to get to the answer is what makes math make sense for little kids.
Yeah, I definitely think that a misconception or like something that I see online all the time, it'll be a meme that we're making math more difficult. But what I think it is that we're making math accessible to each child and easier for them to be able to manipulate the real world through a mathematical lens. And for example, I keep bringing the multiplication thing. As a kid, I didn't know what multiplication was. I just knew that I got to multiply it. Today, my kids are counting how many coffees I drink each month, and they saw the number three repeated 3 times, and it was really cool to see them already be, oh, that's 3 times 3, that's 9. Like they understood the repeated addition of multiplication, something that as a kid, I didn't understand how to manipulate that, but they see math differently because they're understanding a lot of the why and the concepts and applying it in real life. And so, yeah, I'm totally for it. I'm very in love with it because I see kids understanding math in a way that I and other people like me as a kid did not understand math or were able to apply it in real life situations.
Yeah, I would say that I'm a little older than you guys, and so I when Common Core was something that was new and my kids were starting to go through school, and sometimes I would be looking at like, what are you doing? How are you solving that? I couldn't understand. But they did, they knew and they were doing different things and manipulating the math problem in different ways. And I think that when I got a fuller understanding, going back when I went back to teaching, just a fuller understanding of, oh, okay, this is what they're doing. And this is why. It's the putting the why behind the practice. And just a very simple example is we're learning about shapes right now in kindergarten and TK, and that seems very simple. Just, this is a rectangle or this is a triangle. I could tell them that, but then to put a picture of it up and ask them, what do you notice? What do you see here? And they were able to tell me all the attributes of a rectangle without me having to tell them anything. Oh, there's 4 sides. Oh, there's 4 corners. They're all straight sides. They have 2 long sides and 2 short sides. Great. We named all the attributes of a rectangle. You'll know that's a rectangle, and that can't be confused with a triangle because they sound alike if you just told them rectangle, triangle, but if we now they know, if they know the attributes, they go in that deeper level, they're going to know for themselves, oh yeah, that's a rectangle because it has all these attributes I already named, and this is a triangle. And so that just helps them, I think, dig in deeper and find that knowledge for themselves without us just giving it all to them. And so that why is really important.
Yeah, I think the big thing is really just what we are seeing now with Common Core standards is like we are teaching numbers and like operations conceptually. And our generation and the generations before us, or I have a feeling I'm a different generation than, some of the I think we may have a Gen Z here. I'm not sure. But nevertheless, I would say even Gen Z, I think we were taught mathematics through like rote memorization and arithmetic, and that's all it was, right? And now we want kids to see math through like concepts and expand their ideas or arrive at their own ideas. And I would say that's the difference. And I think that's where like the tension lies, right? Because it's like, wait, why would you care? Like, just do it this way. It's so much faster. But it's like, no, like numbers have meaning, and so do operations, right? And like we actually operate on numbers. And getting, yeah. So I just think that that's what it is. It's like it's no longer just about speed and accuracy. It's about like true fluency with numbers, right? And that switch.
So, as we've evolved in like our teaching of math, it used to be kind of rote and memorization, and now it's kind of expanded to conceptual. A lot of times when I think of math, I think of just general sort of like evolution of concepts. Where are we going next? If we go back 100 years ago, folks literally had to do arithmetic and rote memorization because there were no calculators, there were no computers. If you didn't know how to do it in your brain, you couldn't, there was going to be no magic solution. Then calculators came out, then computers and laptops, now phones. And so technology is really having us change the way we think about math, how we teach math, what we want our kids to learn from math. And I'm trying to think of the next frontier. And for me, I'm thinking of artificial intelligence or AI. And, as we think of the constant evolution of technology, and machines and things doing a lot of thinking for us, and especially the most rote thinking, I'm wondering, what do you all think is next? Like in the next 10, 20, 30, you can imagine as far as you'd like. What do you think is coming next with how technology has evolved with AI, and how that might change how kids learn math, or how we think about math in school?
I don't really know how it might change for kids in particular, especially lower grade kids, but I do see something really positive coming out of AI, especially for families. I know myself, I grew up in a household where my parents didn't speak English. We came from a different country. They couldn't help me with my homework, and they had nowhere to go to find out what I was actually trying to do on my homework. And now, as a parent who doesn't speak English, or maybe that's just isn't used to what we're learning in school, you can literally open up ChatGPT, type in a question such as, how do you solve 3 times 5 using Common Core standards in 3rd grade? And in Spanish or in Chinese. And it will give you the different strategies that teachers actually teach in the classroom and how to find the answer using each of those strategies. So if like my mom was able to do that when I was little, or if Common Core existed when I was little, she would see, okay, well, my child is doing multiples of a number by adding them. So the strategy she's using is repeated addition, and this is why she's getting to that answer. It would make more sense for a parent who didn't understand the Common Core strategy that the kids are working on. So I kind of see how we can use it as adults to maybe help our kids in the future or now. It works now.
This one's a toughie. Anybody else want to add to it?
Yeah, that is a hard one. I feel like I've been thinking about this question because my brain automatically, I think, goes to a negative. And I love what Susie just said right now because I hadn't thought about that. Like growing up, it was the same thing for me. My parents like did not speak English. And if, this happened today and, I came home with something they were not taught in a different language, AI would definitely be a lifesaver for them. I think for me right now, I'm nervous about all the work that we've done with creativity in math being taken away in the sense that it'll be like if the answer is super accessible to you right there, there's no struggle and there's no struggle in the math. But I definitely see the benefits that AI could provide.
Maria, I feel you. Um, and I like to me, it's really it's complicated because I'm like, yeah, like AI, there's no need to like memorize anything anymore. Right. And I do think I'm like, yeah, but that was true with computers. And that was true with like iPhones, right? Like at some point, it's like, why are we drilling and killing? We don't need that anymore. We live in a new world, right? Um, then I think about like math, like standards for mathematical process and like what mathematical thinking does for kids. And it is a way that we teach kids how to think critically about the world, right? And to be able to look at data and make sense of the data. Um, and yeah, make sense of the data and ask questions and wonder. And I think through that type of thinking that mathematics will teach kids, like we will ultimately create a generation of children that hopefully are creating a better tomorrow, right? Than like the one we are currently living in. And so I think that even though AI is here and they can do like the computation for us, um, and arguably, if you talk to people, they're like, they can do the critical thinking for you too, right? Which is true. But I want to believe that they're never going to replace the human mind. And I believe that math will always be important to teach reasoning, critical thinking, and just get children and young adults ready to lead us into the future. And so it's scary times, but I think more than ever, it's we have to accept that math is no longer about rote memorization, and there's a greater purpose to it.
All right. So my next question is, as families may be watching this and they think, what is the resource that you might recommend for kids learning math? And it could be for the grades you teach or taught, or it could just be a curriculum that we use in school. But what resource or material do you think would be really helpful for families interested in supporting their child's mathematical growth at home?
I highly suggest that parents give their kids an opportunity to work on iReady at home. They do have usernames and logins that could be available if they ask their teacher for them. Just working on it at least 20 minutes a night. It's just fluency practice at this point for them because they're learning math from our math curriculum in school, but the math that they're learning on iReady are geared towards the gaps in their mathematical learning. So if, for example, my students are third graders and we're learning third grade math, but some things that they may have missed during COVID that they just weren't able to catch up on are things that they will be learning on iReady Math. And so helping them fill in those gaps and be prepared for what's coming next is so vital.
Yes, to iReady. Definitely. I would also add on like finding pockets of real life math application. It can be as simple as like getting some frijolitos, getting some beans, having those babies count them up, having them like notice the tiles on the floor, on the ceiling, and depending on their age, like having them count those, find the area of that, seeing the arrays in that. So like math is everywhere in our world, in our real life. It could be like driving in the car, like noticing how many birds you see flying in a V formation, counting them by twos. Those little pockets of time, like, are so helpful and make math super fun. And they're very easy. You don't have to use anything. You can just use the situations around you.
Yeah, Maria, we're so aligned. I'm like, oh, you stole mine. But I think for me, I'm like, what is the most valuable resource? And it is you, parents. Math is all around us. It is in the kitchen, it is in your living room, it is, in your car. It is everywhere. And so really being intentional about giving students or asking your children where they see math, or even I'm thinking about like in your car as a third grade teacher, I want you to be able to tell time. And it's like, yes, a digital clock exists and it's fine, but let's talk about elapsed time. We're leaving school right now. It's 3:15. Let's see what time it is when we get home. 3:37. How long did it take us to get home? Right? Those like very authentic, real moments where you can bring math into the conversation with your kid is so valuable. To Ms. Gomez's point too, the kitchen is there's never ending math there. From hand me like the rice, let's count the grains, like what type of groups can you put them in, to let's measure this out, right? Like whenever there's measurement, there's fractions. And so making those connections for kids is one of the best things that you can do to support their learning in mathematics.
Yeah, I agree. I think that just, we as parents don't have a lot of time. So use the things that you're already doing, going to the grocery store. I mean, I have, bananas right in my fruit basket. So like how many bananas are here? It's easy to, use math at the store or at home in the kitchen or the things you have. Something else that we talk a lot about is counting collections, and just counting collections is a really great way for students to learn one-to-one correspondence, counting by tens, grouping. And as I was looking around, like, what do I have right here on my table? I have like just these are rubber bands and paper clips, and it's just something that you can pull right away and go, okay, count these, or sort these into colors for the little ones, or count them out. You can it's something easy to do. You can put them in bowls. You can, they can just sit there and count, and it's great for parents because they stay busy. So that's another another benefit of it. And another thing I had just thinking of, and this is something we do in class too, is using cards. Cards are a great way. Probably everybody has a deck of cards, and just something really simple is comparing numbers, holding them up and just saying, okay, what number is greater? What number is less? Or maybe multiplication, dividing or multiplying them. You can do a lot of things with, like everybody has said, the things that are around you. So make the most of it with what you have.
One of my favorite go-to games that's free, available no matter where you are, and will help all four math operations: addition, multiplication, subtraction, division, is a game that's very similar to rock, paper, scissors. And I always recommend this game to my parents because math fluency is like so important for kids to be able to say what 4 + 4 is right away. It's valuable for them to get better at math as they grow. And the game goes like this. So you're a parent, your child is ready to play with you. You play rock, paper, scissors, but instead you say 1, 2, 3, shoot. And each person shoots a number. So for example, if the child put out 3 fingers and you put out 4, whoever says what it equals, let's say you're doing addition because you're a first grader, whoever says 7 first wins. Maybe you're in 4th grade and you're doing multiplication. So 3 times 4, whoever says the answer first wins. You could do the same with division or subtraction. I think it's something you could play in the car, something while you're waiting in line at the grocery store, something while you're waiting to drop them off at school. It takes a few minutes and it helps them memorize the answer a little bit more quickly. And it's free.
Well, thank you all for sharing these resources. One theme I kind of heard from all of you is it doesn't have to be hard. You don't have to plan and gather a lot of things. You can use what's around you in your surroundings and ask questions to have kids make sense of math around them, because math is a language, and yeah, it's all around us in everything that we do. So taking those opportunities would be wonderful. I know we've got some folks here today, and if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask to any of our panelists, you can feel free to add that into the chat. So we'll wait for a few moments to see if anybody has anything to add to the chat. And meantime, while we're asking folks does anybody want to share any other thought or comment, maybe something that wasn't asked that should have been asked today, or any other thing that you're thinking about as we've had this conversation?
I love that AI question. I'm definitely going to be thinking about that constantly. So I'm glad that that question was asked, and I might ask that to my kids tomorrow and see what they think.
Yeah, that was a good question, because I feel like up until this point, when I think about AI, I'm like, how is it going to make my job as a principal easier? Um, or like, wait, what about writing? Like just thinking about writing in high school and, just accessibility now. So my brain has gone a lot more in the direction of like the future of language arts, more than math, interestingly. So definitely a lot of food for thought.
I would say just don't let our fears, our own fears of math, and parents out there, their fears of math when they were growing up, to make them feel scared to work with their students. I think your teachers are a great resource. Every teacher will be very willing, I believe, to provide you with some resources, and whatever that is, or some games, like Susie mentioned a really quick one. I think teachers have those in their back pockets and can give you resources if you ask. So don't be afraid to ask.
All right, so just looking to see if we have anything in the chat. Hope it's not disabled. If it's disabled, to the folks who are here, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix it. I'm not the technical genius, but I think it's enabled. And I think our panel has just wowed everybody with all of their wonderful answers. So thank you. I want to thank each and every one of you. Susanna, our kinder and TK teacher at GCS1, Susie Janazian, our 3rd grade math and science teacher at GCS1, Maria, our math and everything teacher at GCS2, Daniela, our GCS2 principal. And there is a raised hand, and we have a parent asking a question, and that parent is Stephanie Piazza, who has a question for this panel, because she's not going to let us get away without answering a question. So let's see. I see a raised hand for Stephanie, but I think it's open now. Steph, can you ask your question? So I don't know if the audience can read the chat. So I will read it. how can we build math confidence in our kiddos?
That's a good question. I think sometimes pairing students together, I mean, this is in the classroom. I think pairing students together and having them learn from each other and see how somebody else does it can how someone else can solve a problem is gives them confidence. So maybe at home you don't have that opportunity to pair them with somebody, but maybe you can give them ways that you would approach it, the math problem, and just letting them know. And we talked about today at school too, also some mantras for that we can use to encourage students and like, you can do it. Give them that confidence, fill up their bucket with that. Like, hey, even though it's hard, when it gets hard, that means your brain is learning and growing. And sometimes they need to hear those positive comments too.
Yeah. And I think to add on a little bit, I think going back to what I said in one of the earlier questions around like placing value on the process rather than the answer is so critical when we are working with early mathematicians. And I think because when you're focused on the process, you're not focused on being right or being wrong, right? You're just focused on the thinking being presented. So I think that would be my tip. Um, and also learn where your kid is mathematically and build off of that, right? So even if they're in kinder and they're supposed to be counting to 120 right now, is that kinder or is that first grade? That's first grade, huh?
First grade's to
Yeah,
120.
kinder is 100. First is 120. Anyways, even if they're in kinder and they're supposed to be counting to 100, sit with them, give them a little jar with some things and find out what can you get to? Oh, I just learned my child can get to 17. Tomorrow, we're going to work on getting to 19 and then build off of that, right? Rather than like, you're supposed to know this. No, honor where they are and create opportunities for baby steps forward, I think is one of the best things you can do to help build their confidence.
You guys have all touched upon what I was thinking, which was like just creating a growth mindset. And with everything that you do, it's easier to build confidence in math if you're already talking about seeing the beauty in mistakes, because then they've been practicing that in ELA, they've been practicing that in social studies, they've been practicing that out in the yard, they've been practicing about that when they've said something mean to a friend, and then they like, find the beauty of like apologizing and like repairing that relationship. So if you're already in general talking about a growth mindset, it's very easy to transfer that into like a specific subject, which is math. Um, and I would say also finding different experiences, having them experience math in different areas and being vulnerable. I think as the adult, they see you as this all-knowing person. So if you yourself demonstrate vulnerability, like you don't always know the answer right away, even if you're faking it, like, you know what, let me go through this strategy, and you make a mistake, then seeing you being vulnerable and making a mistake and not like freaking out about it and trying again a different strategy is very powerful for a child.
Well, I want to thank you all. We have a surprise guest as we close out today. We have Mr. Leandro Hernandez Sipley, who is joining us today for his first on-camera appearance, I think, at school. So hello, Leandro, budding mathematician. And just want to thank all of us, of course, our panelists, which I've already thanked, and also our participants, those who are watching us now and who may watch us later, to explore all these concepts about math. And I think what we've heard tonight is growth, process, making sense of the world is how I would summarize our conversation today. And Ruben also Bidding us a good evening. Thank you all, and may the mathematical work continue. So I will see you all soon, and thank you all for your time. Goodbye, everyone.